The bank's confirmation tone was still ringing in my ears when my husband slid a suitcase across the marble floor and pointed at the front door. "Pack your things," Lucas said, not even looking ashamed. "I've found someone better. Your job here is done." His mother stood beside him with her chin lifted like she was watching a servant get dismissed. And in the hallway, leaning against the frame in a cream coat, was the woman he had apparently chosen to replace me before the wire transfer had even cleared. I stared at the man whose asterisk $450,000 debt I had just erased that morning. Then I smiled. "Lucas," I said quietly, "have you lost your mind? Or did you forget something? Before I tell you what happened next, tell me something in the comments. What city are you watching from tonight? I always love seeing how far these stories travel. My name is Hannah Reed, and for 7 years, I loved my husband with the kind of loyalty people usually mistake for weakness. I was the woman who remembered everyone's medication, everyone's birthdays, everyone's bills. I built shopping lists in my head, balanced accounts before sunrise, and smiled through exhaustion because I believed that if two people meant their vows, they could survive almost anything. Lucas used to be different. When I met him, he was charming in that warm, rough-edged way that made you think life beside him would never be boring. He ran a small construction firm. He talked about building homes, hiring good people, growing something honest. He would kiss my forehead and tell me I made the world feel steady. I believed him. By the 3rd year of our marriage, I was handling the books for his company after my own consulting hours, making dinner for his parents when his father's health worsened, and quietly shelving my own plans for children because just 1 more year was always the promise. Then Lucas got greedy. He stopped wanting a stable business. He wanted a bigger office, a luxury car, the right club membership, the right clients, the right photographs online. He started spending money to impress people who never would have stood beside him when things got ugly. And eventually, things got ugly. A failed land deal, private lenders, missed repayments, penalties, threatening letters, a debt pile so heavy it felt like every room in our house had stopped breathing. $450,000. I still remember the night I found him sitting in the dark at our kitchen island, staring at a notice stamped in red. His face looked grey. His hands were shaking. "If this comes out," he whispered, "I lose everything. Not we, I..." That should have warned me. But love makes you reach for people even when they're the ones dragging you under. So I did what I always did. I stepped in. I used the savings I had spent years building. I liquidated investments my late mother left me. I sold the small seaside apartment I had inherited before marriage, the one place in the world that still smelled like her sunscreen and lavender soap. I cancelled the fertility treatment I had never told many people about because Lucas said this was temporary and families could wait. I worked until my shoulders locked with pain. I skipped meals. I negotiated with men who spoke about my husband like he was already finished, and through all of it, Lucas grew colder, not grateful, not humbled. Colder? He stopped asking if I was sleeping. He stopped noticing when my migraines came back. He started criticising the way I dressed, the way I spoke at dinners, the way I failed to understand pressure. His mother, Diane, made it worse. "You've always been too soft for a man like Lucas," she told me one afternoon as I reheated soup for his father. "He needs a wife who helps him rise, not one who reminds him of struggle." I almost laughed at the cruelty of it. I was the only reason her son was still standing. Then came Vanessa. Polished, younger, careful smile, real estate money. The kind of woman Diane would point at in magazines and call appropriate. At first, Lucas called her a client, then he called her a friend, then he started turning his phone face down. I knew. Of course I knew. Women always know when the room changes temperature, but I was drowning in paperwork, deadlines, lender calls, and the desperate hope that if I could just get us through one final crisis, the man I married might still be somewhere under all that vanity and panic. The worst part? He used that hope. 3 days before the final payment deadline, Lucas came into my home office with tears in his eyes. Real tears. Or at least good enough copies of them. "If this isn't paid by Friday, the company collapses," he said. 38 people lose their jobs. "Hannah, please, I know I've made mistakes, but don't let my whole life be defined by them." He knelt beside my chair. He took my hands. You're the only person who's ever truly loved me. It still makes me sick how close those words came to breaking me all over again. What he did not know was that 2 weeks earlier, after the second lender threatened court action, I had finally listened to my oldest friend, Priya, as a solicitor who had looked me dead in the eye and said, if you save him, save yourself too. Men like this don't learn from mercy. They feed on it. So I didn't wire the money like a blind wife throwing herself on the altar. I paid it through a legal assignment package, every final settlement, every release, every security transfer. Every emergency signature Lucas scribbled without reading because he was too arrogant and too desperate to think clearly. He just kept saying, whatever it is, send it. I'll sign. And I let him. Friday morning, I sent the final transfer. By noon, the debt was cleared. By 6, Lucas told me to dress nicely because his parents wanted to celebrate. I should have known the dining room looked too staged when I walked in. Candles lit, crystal glasses out. Diane wearing lipstick she only saved for special occasions. Graham silent at the table, weak from his illness, eyes lowered. And Vanessa sitting in my chair. My chair Lucas didn't even flinch when he saw me notice. Hannah, he said, lifting his glass, let's not make this messy. You've been helpful, truly. But this marriage has been over for a long time. The room went so still I could hear the ice settle in the water jug. I looked at Vanessa. She would not meet my eyes. Then Diane spoke, all cool cruelty and polished poison. A graceful woman knows when to leave. Something inside me cracked then. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in that quiet final way a branch breaks after carrying too much snow. I asked Lucas one question. When were you planning to tell me that the woman you called a client was sleeping with my husband? He exhaled like, I was the inconvenience. Don't do this. Not in front of everyone. Not in front of everyone. As if he had not seated her at my table, as if I was the embarrassing part. Then he said the sentence I will never forget for as long as I live. You were useful in a hard season, Hannah, but Vanessa fits the life I'm moving into. Useful. I think that word hurt more than the affair because it told me he had measured my love, my sacrifice, my body, my grief, my loyalty, and priced all of it as temporary labour. When I didn't answer, Diane stood, picked up the suitcase I hadn't even noticed near the wall and rolled it toward me. The humiliation burned so hot my skin went cold. Graham finally whispered, Lucas, enough. But Lucas was drunk on victory now. The house is mine, he said. The company is mine. My future is mine. Take your things and leave with some dignity. That was when I smiled, not because I felt strong. I didn't. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might be sick. My hands were numb. My marriage was collapsing in front of people who were supposed to be family. But beneath the pain, there was one calm, sharp truth. He had no idea what he had signed. So I looked at him with all the softness he had mistaken for stupidity and said, Lucas, have you lost your mind? Or did you forget something? He laughed, actually laughed. Vanessa looked confused. Diane frowned. Lucas stepped aside and opened the front door like a king dismissing a beggar, so I picked up the suitcase. And I walked out into the rain. The night air hit me like ice. Water soaked through my coat in seconds. The porch light switched off behind me before I even reached the gate. I made it to my car, shut the door, and finally let myself break. Not loudly, just one hand over my mouth, shoulders shaking, forehead against the steering wheel, 7 years, my mother's apartment, my savings, my dream of a child, my pride. All of it seemed to be sitting there in the dark with me, soaked and shivering and asking why love had cost so much. For 10 whole minutes, I thought they had won. Then my phone rang. Priya. I answered on the first breath. It's registered, she said. The lender assignment, the charge over the company, and the title transfer clause. Hannah, listen carefully. He cannot remove you from that property. Legally, he just threw the secured party out of her own house. I closed my eyes. Rain hammered the windshield. And for the first time that day, I breathed like a person who might survive. What about the company? I whispered. There was the slightest smile in her voice. If he defaults on the repayment schedule or breaches the occupancy terms tied to the settlement control transfers, after tonight, I'd say he's in more trouble than he realises. The next morning, I did not call Lucas. I did not argue. I did not send paragraphs. At 9 km, I arrived at the house with Priya, a court officer, and a locksmith. Lucas opened the door in yesterday's shirt, still wearing the confidence of a man who thought betrayal had made him powerful. That confidence lasted maybe 3 seconds. "Why are you here?" he snapped. Priya handed him the papers. "You are in formal breach of the secured settlement you signed yesterday," she said. "The debt was not simply paid off, Mr. Reed. It was assigned to Hannah." He blinked, then frowned, then read, and I watched the exact moment his face stopped belonging to a winner. "No," he said. "No, that's not right." Priya didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "You pledged the company, the property rights, and emergency control provisions in exchange for the settlement. Your wife," she paused, then corrected herself, "soon-to-be ex-wife, financed the rescue. You signed every page." Diane appeared in the hallway, pale and furious. "What is this?" I turned to her. "This," I said, "is the part where being cruel gets expensive." Lucas read faster, then slower, then back to the first page again, like panic might change the words if he stared hard enough. "I didn't know," he said. And there it was, the truth. He hadn't trusted me enough to respect me, but he had trusted me enough to sign anything, if it saved him. That was his downfall. Vanessa came down the stairs halfway through the scene, froze when she saw the officer, and looked at Lucas like she had just realised his expensive future might actually be a legal disaster in designer shoes. "Lucas?" she said. He ignored her. Then came the panic. "This is absurd," he barked. "Hannah, tell them. Tell them this was just help. You were helping me." I held his gaze. "I was," I said, "until you tried to throw me out of the house I saved." The locksmith stepped past him. The officer explained the immediate restrictions. Priya outlined the next steps. And Lucas, the man who had dismissed me as useful, stood in the centre of his own hallway, looking smaller with every sentence. By the end of that week, Vanessa was gone. By the end of that month, the company was under enforced restructuring, Lucas's access stripped pending proceedings, and the story of his affair and financial deception had spread through every circle he had once been so desperate to impress. Diane stopped calling me soft. She started calling lawyers. It didn't help. In the divorce, the evidence was clear. The money trail was clear. The betrayal was clear. The intimidation, the affair, the financial manipulation, clear. Lucas lost more than reputation. He lost leverage. He lost the house. He lost the illusion that charm could outrun consequence. And me? I got something I had not felt in years, peace. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Peace. I kept the house only long enough to sell it and start over somewhere quieter. I restarted my consulting work. I took time to grieve the version of myself that had confused self-sacrifice with love. I planted jasmine outside my new place because my mother used to say healing should have a scent, some mornings still hurt. But they do not own me anymore. And if there is one thing I learned, it is this. Never underestimate the quiet person in the room. Sometimes the one saying the least is the one holding the truth, the receipts, and the strength to survive what should have destroyed them. Cruelty always thinks it has won too early. So tell me honestly, what would you have done in my place? And do you think Lucas deserved any second chance after what he did? If this story moved you, like it, share it with someone who needs the reminder. Subscribe for more stories that hit hard and end with justice. And don't forget to comment your city below, because sometimes the sweetest smile comes right before the truth changes everything.